The air inside the skiff smelled like scorched metal and old blood. Jarek Thorne tightened his grip on the throttle as he guided the rust-patched vessel through Novia's low-orbit dust belt. Outside the cracked viewport, red clouds twisted like bruises in the sky. Storm debris from the orbital mining collapse, still circling after 7 years. The cityscape beneath him was a jagged sprawl of neon rot and half-lit towers, speared through with corporate banners that flickered like broken prayers. He hated flying over the East Quarter. Too many memories lived in the shadows there, too many ghosts. But none of them were as heavy as the one sitting behind him now. She hadn't said a word since the handoff. Just sat chained to the skiff's inner hull like some ancient weapon waiting to be remembered. He could feel her eyes on him, watching, measuring. Her name was Seren Aelith. And if what the Syndicate said was true, she should have been dead years ago. They hadn't delivered credits, not tech, not even high-grade fusion cartridges. No, when Jarek showed up to clear his debt, the Syndicate's broker smiled like a knife and presented him with a living myth, sealed in a transport crate, her skin smeared with dirt and blood and something older. Something war-born. Payment, they said. Jarek hadn't argued, not out loud, but inside something cracked open. He glanced at the rear mirror again. She hadn't moved, still seated, legs crossed at the ankle, arms resting loosely in chains. Her skin was a soft blue, Kulan blue, the kind that shimmered faintly under low light, and her long black hair was matted with ash and sweat. There was a blinking collar around her neck, tech-etched and cruel. Suppression device, high grade. She was a slave. At least that's what they claimed. But he knew better. She radiated the kind of presence no collar could kill, something sharpened and dangerous beneath the bruises, something that didn't belong in chains. No one's supposed to survive the fall of the Reaches. Not her, not Serene. The skiff rattled as he dipped lower, avoiding the pulse scan of a patrolling drone. Novia's night air shimmered like oil, thick with static discharge. A neon ad for augmented limbs flickered past, followed by a banner for a pleasure den that catered to off-worlders. Welcome to the end of humanity's promise, Jarek thought bitterly, where laws meant less than loyalty, and freedom was something you stole or died chasing. As the skiff docked beside his hidden workshop, a grim structure wedged into the side of a broken sky bridge, Seren finally spoke. Her voice wasn't weak. It was ragged, dry, but there was strength in it. Why am I alive? Jarek powered down the skiff and turned slowly, letting his eyes meet hers. Ask the bastards who sold you, he said flatly. Seren's gaze didn't flinch. I wasn't asking them. Silence lingered, sharp as shattered glass. He stood, ducking to avoid the ceiling conduit as he moved toward her. She rose to meet him, taller than he expected, even shackled. Her stance was poised, like she didn't register the weight of the chains at all. You've got a reputation, Thorne, she said, her accent curling around the consonants like silk. I thought you'd be taller. And I thought you'd be dead. That earned him a faint smile. Not kind, not bitter, just there. A ghost of defiance. He reached for the key and unlocked her wrist cuffs first, then her ankles. The collar stayed. You try anything, he warned. I'll put a slug in your spine. Her lips curved slightly. You really believe that? He didn't. But he didn't answer. Inside the workshop, heat wrapped around them like a second skin, half from the flickering power cores and half from the residual heat trapped in the ferro-steel walls. The room smelled of ozone, oil, and old dreams. A dozen projects lay in varying stages of decay, gutted drones, malfunctioning suppressor rounds, half-assembled thermal plating. A world built for function, not comfort. She stepped inside like she belonged there. Jarek stayed behind for a beat, watching her move. She didn't ask questions, didn't look afraid. Her eyes flicked over his tools, the generator hum, the hanging light cables with practiced calculation. The Kulan were bred for war, biotech enhanced, genetically refined for tactical perfection. Earth's last war with them had ended in surrender. But Seren Aelith wasn't just any Kulan. She had led the last free resistance cell during the corporate siege of Novia's eastern territories. The humans called it the Reaches. The Syndicate called it a successful purge. She had been the face of a revolution until she vanished. And now somehow she was in his workshop, in chains. You're wondering why I didn't kill you in the skiff, she said suddenly, not turning around. Jarek's jaw tensed. Figured the collar helps, It's a deterrent, not a leash. He moved to his workbench and started tinkering with an old modulator just to give his hands something to do. You planning to test me? If I wanted to escape, she said, turning slowly, you wouldn't have made it past the trade district. He looked up, and for just a moment, the air between them shifted. A pulse, a charge. She was beautiful, but not in the polished, synthetic way that Novia's elite adored. Hers was the beauty of storms and broken weapons. Fierce, unapologetic, alive. He hated that he noticed. Then why didn't you? He asked quietly. Saren walked toward him, the soft clink of her collar barely audible over the workshop's ambient hum. She stopped just a meter away. Because, she said, voice like a quiet blade, I wanted to see what kind of man you were before I decided what to do. He met her gaze and saw no fear, only fire, and something else buried beneath it. Grief, maybe, or guilt, the kind that mirrored his own. I'm not your savior, he said, and I didn't ask for one. You're not staying here. Then sell me. He didn't answer. Give me back to them, she pressed, tone sharper now. Send me to the syndicate. Let them finish the job. Jarek turned away. The soldering iron hissed as he gripped it too tightly. He'd survived the collapse of the resistance by walking away, not fighting, not dying for a cause he didn't believe in anymore. He buried his guilt under layers of work, dirt, and silence. And now here she was, the ghost of what he could have died for, what he should have. He stared at the glowing circuitry, jaw clenched, voice low. I don't trade in people. Saren studied him for a long moment. Then, without a word, she walked to the corner of the room and sat on the edge of a rusted cot, legs crossed, gaze forward, waiting, not obedient, not defeated, just patient. Jarek exhaled, leaning against the bench, suddenly exhausted. He couldn't let her go. The syndicate would come looking for her, and if they found her here, it'd be his neck. But keeping her, protecting her, that wasn't a choice either. It was suicide. So why couldn't he throw her out? Maybe because she wasn't just a weapon, or a memory, or a debt paid in flesh. Maybe because some part of him, some reckless, rotted piece of conscience, still remembered what it meant to believe in something. She wasn't just the past. She was the storm still coming. And Jarek Thorne, coward, survivor, mechanic, couldn't take his eyes off her. As night bled deeper into Novia's sky, the wind screamed against the steel walls, and the lights flickered like they always did when a system sensed danger. She sat, he watched. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of things neither of them dared to say. But it was coming, all of it. And when it did, this broken world wouldn't burn despite them. It would burn because of them, together. The storm broke just after midnight. Novia's winds had moods like God's, bitter, fickle, and loud, and tonight they howled through the sky bridge like something feral. Rusted cables clanged against each other above the workshop as rain pelted the steel roof in sheets, each drop sharp and fast like shrapnel. Inside, the old generator groaned under the pressure of the storm surge, dimming the lights in slow, anxious pulses. Jarek Thorne sat at his workbench, elbows resting on the scarred metal, head down as if listening to the storm could drown out the questions in his mind. A datapad flickered beside him, the screen half covered in schematics, the rest frozen on a blinking warning. Syndicate transaction complete. Asset delivered. Ownership confirmed. He hated that word. Ownership. Hated it enough to nearly smash the screen right there. Behind him, across the workshop, Saren Aelith hadn't moved since she'd claimed the cot. She lay on her side, collar still active, arms tucked beneath her like she wasn't shackled, but choosing stillness. Her eyes weren't closed. She hadn't even tried to sleep. Neither had he. Jarek ran a hand over his face, gritty with sweat and dust. The silence between them felt heavier than the storm, more dangerous. He glanced back. Her gaze met his immediately, no hesitation. You always watch people when they sleep? She asked softly. Jarek's voice was dry. You're not sleeping. Because I know you're watching. There was no heat in her tone, no mockery, just quiet awareness, like every word she spoke had been weighed before release. Jarek leaned back in his chair. The old servos creaked under the shift. Can't blame me for being cautious. You can, she said, sitting up, her movement slow and fluid. But I wouldn't. She stood and moved toward the workbench. Her steps made no sound, even on the metal floor. She stopped on the other side of the table, arms crossed, the collar at her neck humming faintly with power. I don't belong here, she said, scanning the room. And you know that. No, Jarek replied. You belong in a grave. That's what the syndicate claimed. Her jaw tensed at that, but her expression didn't break. They tried, got close. What happened? I made it expensive. He almost smiled at that. Almost. A short silence stretched between them, filled only by the rumble of thunder overhead. The lights buzzed again, dimmed, then steadied. Jarek studied her in the flickering light. You led the Reach's rebellion, started riots in the Syndicate's capital arcologies, put a knife in Director Voss's second son. That's what people say. People say a lot of things, she replied. Did you? Do you care? He did, far more than he should have. And that was the problem. This woman had started fires all over Novia during the first wave of the collapse. When the corporate warlords divided the planet like a pie, she was the voice calling for unity between humans and off-worlders, between scavengers and soldiers. And then the Syndicate crushed her, or claimed to. And now she was here, standing in his workshop like she hadn't just spent years dead in the public record. Why now, he asked. Why give you to me? Saren's brow furrowed. You think I wanted this? I think someone wanted you buried again and figured I'd do it quiet. You're not very quiet. Not anymore. He stood and faced her fully, voice steady. I'm not keeping you, but I'm not handing you back either. That's not how I do things. Then what do you do, Thorn? He didn't answer immediately. That question had haunted him longer than he liked to admit. What did he do? Survive? Lie low? Patch tech and drink himself numb? He wasn't a fighter. Not anymore. He'd walked away from that path, left it bleeding in the streets of East Novia with the rest of the corpses. He rubbed at the scar on his wrist where an old servitude tag had been carved out years ago. A reminder of the past, and a warning. I do what I can, he said finally. Saren looked at him with something between understanding and contempt. That sounds a lot like doing nothing. Jarek stepped closer, not out of anger, but gravity. And what would you have me do? Storm the Syndicate with a wrench? Join another lost cause just to feel righteous while I die? No, she said, her voice soft. But you could stop pretending you're not already involved. That hit harder than he expected, because deep down she was right. Bringing her here hadn't just made him part of it, it had marked him. If anyone found out he was sheltering the ghost of a rebellion, his name would light up on every bounty screen from here to the core. He stepped back, jaw tight. I have debts. I have enemies. I don't have a war left in me. You don't need a war, she said. You just need a choice. Another silence, this one colder. She turned away, walking back toward the cot. The chain on her collar whispered softly against her skin. Before she reached it, he spoke again, quietly, but with something in his voice he hadn't let out in a long time. The night Sector 13 fell. I was supposed to be there. I was running tech, supply routes, extraction plans, but I pulled out early. Took the last skiff and left 22 people behind. Saren paused but didn't look back. I told myself I saved the ones I could, he continued. But I know the truth. I saved myself. She turned then slowly. That's why you didn't sell me. He didn't nod, didn't confirm it, but she saw it anyway. Outside, lightning cracked across the sky bridge, illuminating the edges of the workshop in sudden flashes of harsh white. She took a breath, then another. And slowly, she crossed the room again, closer this time. I don't forgive you, she said. Not for what you were, not yet. He swallowed. Didn't ask for that. But I need you, and you know you need me. She was close enough now that he could see the faint fractal scars along her cheek, marks left by subdermal enhancements. A war map written on skin. Jarek didn't move. What do you need? To get this collar off, and then to burn what's left of them. He nodded once, just once. And in that motion, 1,000 unspoken things passed between them. Agreement, regret, maybe even a kind of trust. She stepped back. I'll sleep now, she said. He didn't respond, just watched her lie down again. Arms folded beneath her head. This time she closed her eyes. And this time, he didn't look away. He stayed there a while longer, the storm pounding against the workshop like war drums in the distance. The world outside was crumbling, bit by bit, year by year. But inside this broken shelter, something had begun. Not peace, not safety, but something far more dangerous. A spark. And Jarek Thorn knew better than anyone what fire did when you gave it air. The city bled smoke behind them. Novia, all rust and concrete, watched in silence as its forgotten ghost slipped through its underbelly once more. Jarek Thorne didn't look back. His old workshop was gone, burned out, scavenged, and probably crawling with syndicate rats by now. All his tools, his tech, his maps, everything that had once been a barrier between him and the world, lost to fire and ash. Maybe it was fitting. He was done hiding anyway. He moved fast through the tunnels, one hand on the grip of his old mag wrench, eyes scanning the dark. The static-scorched emergency lights flickered overhead, casting broken shadows across the walls. Serene moved ahead of him, silent and sharp, like a blade that had forgotten it could dull. She didn't speak. Neither did he. There wasn't room for words, not now. They had barely escaped the bounty hunters who'd torched the shop. Sloppy mercs, low tier but efficient. A few more seconds and neither of them would be breathing. Still, Jarek couldn't stop thinking about it, not the fire, not the loss, but her. The way she had moved when they were ambushed, not out of panic, not survival. Instinct. She dropped one of them with a blow so fast, so final it made his stomach twist. A reflex. But after it was done, after the man crumpled, twitching, he saw it in her eyes. Not satisfaction, fear, not of them, of herself. Now as they climbed into the lower spill tunnels near the old mining sector, he watched her from behind. She was barely sweating, her breathing was even, but something about her shoulders told a different story. She was cracking, quietly. They emerged in a forgotten corridor, the walls lined with collapsed piping and scorched cables. Jarek brushed soot from his jacket and leaned against the wall, catching his breath. Seren didn't stop. He called after her. "You gonna tell me what that was back there?" She slowed, just a fraction. "What do you think it was?" Her voice was cool but not cold. "I think you didn't mean to kill that guy, and that scares you." She turned around then, just enough for the dim light to catch her eyes. "It doesn't scare me," she said. "It reminds me." "Of what?" "That I'm still dangerous." There was a pause, long, uncomfortable. "You think I didn't already know that?" he asked. She stepped closer. "You didn't see what I did during the war." "Maybe not, but I see what you're doing now. You didn't have to run back to save me during that raid." "I didn't do it for you," she lied. And Jarek let her, because he knew the truth, and so did she. He dropped his bag to the ground and looked around. The space was narrow but secure enough for a few hours of rest. An old ventilation node overhead, hummed with ancient energy, and a rusted utility door sat half-jammed in its frame nearby. He checked it, jammed from the inside. Dead space. Good. He turned to her. "We hold here, just long enough to let the bounty chatter cool down." She didn't argue. She didn't agree either. Just dropped her coat, sat on the floor, and started checking her blade. He sat across from her. After a long silence, she said, "When I was captured, they didn't try to break me. They wanted to unmake me." Jarek blinked. "What does that mean?" "They suppressed my enhancements. Dosed me with hormone suppressants, feedback loops, neural blocks. Not to kill me, to erase me. Rewire me into something passive. Contained." She looked up, eyes burning now. "But it didn't work. I'm still here. And it terrifies me how much of that old rage is still alive." Jarek didn't move. "It's not rage, Seren, it's survival." "No," she said, shaking her head. "Rage has purpose. It wants revenge. Survival just wants to exist." He leaned forward. "And which one do you want?" Her gaze flicked to his. "That's the problem. I don't know anymore." A beat passed. Then Jarek reached into his jacket and pulled out a small canteen. He tossed it to her. She caught it easily. He gave her a small grin. "For someone who doesn't know what she wants, you're doing a hell of a job dragging me into it." She didn't smile, but something in her jaw relaxed. "You didn't have to come with me," she said. "Didn't have much of a choice, did I?" "You always have a choice." "Then I chose you." This time she looked at him. Really looked. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. Not clean or perfect or timed like a story. But it meant something. And she nodded once. Barely. That was all he needed. He stood, walked over, and sat beside her on the cold metal floor. Their shoulders brushed. She didn't move away. Outside, somewhere far above, another patrol drone whirred past. The war was closing in on them again. But for now, just for this moment, they were quiet. And that quiet meant more than safety. It meant trust. It meant they weren't running alone anymore. The door to the old comms bunker let out a mechanical groan as Jarek forced it open, the rusted hinges catching like old wounds refusing to give. The smell hit first: ionized metal, ozone, sweat, and the faint tang of soldered wire. The room beyond wasn't much. An old repurposed maintenance station buried deep beneath the ruins of a collapsed data tower. But it was alive. Lit by jury-rigged consoles and salvaged light strips, the space was filled with humming generators, disassembled drones, and piles of cracked circuit boards. Tech refuse twisted into brilliance. At the center stood Cora, arms crossed, eyebrows raised as if she'd been expecting trouble and got more than she bargained for. "Thorn," she said, the edge in her voice softened only by the ghost of familiarity. "I thought you dropped off the grid for good." Jarek gave her a crooked smile. "I was trying. Turns out the grid doesn't forget." Her gaze slid past him to the tall figure behind, and her expression changed. A beat of silence passed. "No," Cora breathed. "You've got to be kidding me." Seren didn't speak. She didn't flinch, but she stepped forward. Just one deliberate step, and the tension in the room thickened like static before a storm. "You know who I am," Seren said quietly. Cora let out a bitter laugh. "You think anyone who fought in the Reaches could forget that face? You're Seren Aelith, the Ghost General, the Kulan that made half the Syndicate piss themselves and got the rest of us burned alive." Jarek shifted, placing himself slightly between them. "Cora, we didn't come for a reunion." "Damn right you didn't," she snapped. "You came to ask for help, from someone whose squad died under her command." Seren's voice was level. "I didn't come to ask. I came to finish something." "Oh, now you come back?" Cora's tone sharpened, voice rising. "After years of silence? After leaving us to clean up the blood you spilled? You think tossing your collar on my floor makes us even?" Serene's jaw clenched, but she didn't retaliate. "You're right to be angry." "That's the problem," Cora said. "I'm not angry anymore, I'm tired. And you walking in here like a symbol resurrected from some rebel myth? That doesn't fill me with hope. It makes me want to run." Jarek stepped forward. "We're not here to start a movement, we just need the collar gone. Then we leave." Cora looked between them, waited, then sighed, long and deep. "Fine, I'll look at it. No promises, no favors." She motioned toward the metal chair beside her workstation. "Sit." Seren moved without a word. Cora circled her like a mechanic inspecting a live bomb. She leaned in close, examining the collar's interface, tracing her fingers along the embedded circuits at Seren's neck. The tech hummed faintly, a cruel halo of control. "Military-grade suppressor," Cora muttered. 3 biometric locks, pulse trip, and it's fused to her neural ridge. Who did this?" "Syndicate's Black Lab," Seren answered. "Experimental collar class, designed for hybrid silencing." Cora's eyes flicked up. "They used this on you?" Seren nodded once. And for a moment, just a moment, Cora's anger faded. Something else took its place. Pity, respect, maybe both. "This kind of collar, I've only ever seen it used in field terminations," Cora said. "It's not just control, it's erasure." "I know," Seren said. "I watched it kill 4 others before they fitted mine." Jarek's stomach turned. He looked away. Seren kept her voice even. "One of them was a child, barely grown. She couldn't fight back." Cora froze for half a second. Then she snapped on a pair of insulated gloves. "This is going to hurt." Seren's only answer was a steady breath. "Do it." Cora began slicing into the casing with a vibra tool, thin sparks dancing across her gloves. The room filled with the hiss of metal meeting heat. Jarek watched, fists clenched at his sides, every muscle taut. Seren didn't make a sound, but her hands gripped the armrest tight enough to leave dents. Then the tool sparked violently. Cora cursed. "Fail-safe just triggered. She's got 10 seconds before—" Seren moved, fast. One hand gripped the back of the chair, grounding herself. The other slammed into her thigh, pain for pain, keeping her focus anchored. "Keep going," she growled through gritted teeth. Cora did. 3 more sparks, one final flash, and then, snap, the collar fell away. It hit the metal floor with a dull, haunting clatter. Seren didn't collapse, but she sagged, breathless, forehead resting against her arm as sweat dripped from her temple. Her whole body trembled, whether from pain or relief, Jarek couldn't tell. Cora slowly stepped back, eyes wide. "You didn't even scream." "I've done worse to others," Seren said softly. I didn't deserve to scream. Jarek couldn't stay silent. That's not true. She looked at him, eyes hollow but focused. You don't know what I've done. Maybe not, he said, stepping closer, but I know what you're doing now. A silence settled again, this one heavier but cleaner. Cora crossed her arms. You got what you came for, so now what? Seren stood, slower this time, and picked up the collar from the floor. She held it for a beat, then crushed it under her boot with a sharp snap. We find the people who still believe, she said, and we give them a reason to fight. Cora raised an eyebrow. You really think you can bring it back? I don't want the old rebellion, Seren said. That one failed. I want a new one, leaner, meaner, focused. Jarek added, no speeches, no banners, just fire and purpose. Cora stared at them for a long moment. Then she smirked. Shit, you two might actually pull it off. Seren offered her a nod. Will you help? I'm not strapping on a rifle again, Cora said, but I've got ears and wires and names. That's enough. Jarek glanced at Seren. Where do we start? Her answer came without hesitation. Silo 9. Cora blinked. That place is a corpse. No one's touched it in years. That's why it's perfect, Seren said. No one expects fire to come from ashes. And in her voice there was no doubt, just resolve. And Jarek knew, with a clarity he hadn't felt in years, he wasn't just following her anymore. He was standing beside her. Silo 9 greeted them with silence. The air was colder here, thin and stale, carrying the weight of all that had once lived and died beneath this broken structure. Moonlight filtered through fractured steel girders above, painting long silver streaks across the dust-choked floors. Somewhere, water dripped. Echoes answered in return. Serene stepped into the darkness first, her boots careful but unhesitant. Her shoulders were squared, but Jarek could see the way her hand lingered near her sidearm, not in fear, but habit. She didn't trust this place, not anymore, neither did he. They moved through the ruins in silence. Rubble, burned fabric, shattered crates. A broken datapad, long dead, blinked once as they passed, as if trying to remember them. Seren stopped near a crumpled support beam, crouched, and ran her fingers along the metal. The coating flaked off beneath her touch. I remember this, she said. Jarek stepped beside her. Used to be the triage post, she murmured. Kayan took a round to the gut here, still kept calling out positions between seizures. She didn't look at him, but Jarek saw the flicker in her jaw, something barely buried. I told him to stay behind. He disobeyed. He saved people, Jarek said gently. He bled out, she replied, and I didn't even turn around. She stood slowly, brushed her hands on her coat. Her voice didn't crack. Her eyes didn't glisten. But the grief lived in her bones, layered and locked beneath every breath. They kept moving. They passed what had once been a command alcove, now a twisted wall of melted glass and rusted control panels. Above it, someone had scrawled old resistance sigils into the metal with fire. Faded now, but not forgotten. That's when they heard it. A footstep. Jarek froze. Seren's hand was already on her blade. Another sound, a low chuckle. Well, came a voice from the far corridor. It's true. You are alive. It was almost dawn. Not that you could tell in Navia. The sky here didn't glow, didn't soften. It simply shifted from black to an industrial gray, like the city itself was trying to pretend time hadn't passed. Seren stood at the edge of the ruined comms tower, wind tugging at the loose strands of her hair. Below, the sleeping bones of the city stretched out in every direction, broken monorails, skeletal towers, dead power lines sparking faintly in the dark. But she didn't see the ruin. She saw targets, weak points, vulnerabilities, a plan. Jarek stood behind her, arms crossed, eyes on the back of her neck. You haven't blinked in 10 minutes, he said quietly. Seren didn't turn. Every minute we wait, they rebuild. You need sleep. I need fire. Jarek didn't argue. Instead, he stepped beside her and looked down at the same wasteland. I used to think this city was just trash and tech, he said. Something to pick clean and survive in. And now? Now I think it's kindling. That earned the smallest curve of her lips. She turned to him. Cora confirmed the location? He nodded. Supply convoy, plasma cells, biofuel, suppressor rounds, syndicate route, midday transfer, minimal escort. Good, Seren said. We hit hard. We make noise. We send a message. Jarek paused. And after that, she looked at him. Then we disappear and wait for the sparks. But it starts with us. Seren nodded. And then, as if it had been waiting for its cue, the signal beacon blinked once, then again, then rapid fire. 3 short pulses, 2 long, 1 short. Jarek's heart kicked. Cora? Not just her, Seren said, moving toward the console. That's resistance code, high tier. She opened the receiver. 1 line appeared on the cracked display. The embers are awake. More messages followed. Fragmented names, sectors, units thought disbanded, fighters in hiding, rogue engineers, ghosts, survivors. Jarek read them, stunned. They're answering. They're listening, Seren said. Now we give them something to believe in. She paced the length of the room, energy coiling in her like a storm ready to break. But Jarek watched her differently now. She was no longer just surviving. She was leading. Not with speeches, not with power, with presence and purpose. He crossed the room, voice low. You know, once we hit that convoy, they'll throw everything at us. I'm counting on it. Serene, this isn't just rebellion anymore. This is war. She stopped, turned, and for the first time in days, maybe years, there was light in her eyes. Not soft, not fragile, focused, alive. I'm not afraid of war, she said. I was afraid of fighting alone. Jarek stepped closer. You're not alone now. She looked at him, and for a second, everything else, the comms, the city, the rising fire, faded. Only him, only her. They had lost homes, names, blood, but not this. Her voice softened, almost a whisper. I don't know what we'll become after this. Then let's survive long enough to find out. She reached for him, not out of desperation, not because she needed to, but because she chose to. Their hands met, fingers laced, and then she pulled him close. The kiss wasn't sweet. It wasn't gentle. It was everything they had held back, grief, fury, fear, and the stubborn will to live beyond it. When it broke, they stood forehead to forehead, breathing the same fire. I'm ready, she whispered. So am I. Outside, the first rays of false dawn crept over Novia, and in the silence before the storm, 2 rebels stood in the ruins of their past, arming themselves with the future. The Syndicate convoy rolled through Sector 8 like it owned the sky. 3 armored haulers, 6 escort drones, 2 ground skiffs bristling with pulse rifles and reinforced riot plating. Their formation was tight, efficient, and predictable. That was their first mistake. Seren lay flat across the top of a crumbled skyrail beam, her breath steady, her eyes locked on the target through the cracked lens of an old targeting scope. She didn't need a rifle. She didn't need precision. She needed the right moment. Beside her, Jarek adjusted the transmitter in his hands, tuning it to Cora's feed. All units in position, Cora's voice crackled through. Confirm? Confirmed, Seren said. She turned to Jarek. This is it. He nodded. No backing out now. Good, she replied. We don't run anymore. He smiled. Not nervous, not unsure, just proud. On your mark, Commander. She flinched, just slightly, but she didn't correct him. The haulers passed beneath them, slow and heavy, carrying the plasma fuel that powered the entire west defense wall of the Syndicate's main headquarters. Taking them out wouldn't just cost the enemy resources. It would expose a weakness and send a message no sensor jam could silence. Serene exhaled. Now! Cora's signal burst rippled through the skiff systems like a virus. Drones jerked mid-flight, spiraled, and crashed. Jarek tossed the EMP grenade down the shaft. The explosion was quiet, but the aftermath was not. The first hauler locked up and stalled. The second slammed into it. Chaos. Then from 3 directions they emerged. Ryan's cell from the west flank, Cora's patched-up mechs from below, and Seren and Jarek from above. It wasn't a battle. It was an execution. Seren moved like a force unleashed, no longer bound, no longer afraid. Her blade tore through armor like memory cutting through denial. She didn't fight for vengeance anymore. She fought for future. Jarek kept close, laying suppressive fire, covering flanks, guiding wounded rebels behind overturned crates. He wasn't just fighting beside her. He was part of her strategy. The convoy was taken in 7 minutes. The Syndicate forces surrendered, those who didn't fall first. Seren stood on the wrecked hauler, smoke curling around her like a crown. The fuel burned in the background, a controlled blaze lighting up the sky with defiance. We send the footage to every encrypted node, Cora said beside her, panting. It'll spread faster than their propaganda machine can react. Ryan stepped forward, blood on his jacket but his eyes clear. They'll know it was you. Good, Seren said. Let them remember what they tried to erase. He looked at her a moment longer, then gave her a nod, not of forgiveness, but of trust. They had something more powerful now, respect. As the survivors regrouped, Jarek found her standing alone by the ridge, looking out at the city. He stepped up behind her. "You okay?" She didn't answer immediately. Then, "It didn't feel like revenge." He smiled softly. "Maybe because it wasn't. They'll come for us now, all of us. They always were." She turned to him. And this time, the look in her eyes wasn't fire. It was peace. "You were right," she said. "I didn't need to lead an army. I needed to stop waiting for someone else to." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You led the way just by standing back up." They stood in silence a moment. Then she asked, "What do we do now?" Jarek tilted his head. "We build, not for war, for what comes after." "And us?" He smiled, stepped closer. "We've already started." She leaned into him, this time not out of urgency or pain, but choice. And when they kissed, it wasn't desperate. It was certain. Around them, the city stirred. In the ashes of rebellion, something new had taken root. Not just rage, not just fire, hope, not the kind that begged, the kind that dared. 1 week later, the message played across every stolen frequency on Novia. "This is not a call to arms. This is a call to memory. You were never broken. You were buried. We are digging ourselves out, sector by sector, name by name, flame by flame." The message didn't include a signature, but everyone knew who had spoken it. And far above the wreckage, in a high cliff shelter lit by salvaged solar panels and surrounded by half-built tech arrays, Saren and Jarek stood side by side watching the stars rise over a world no longer silent. They didn't need titles. They didn't need medals. They had each other. And a future that finally felt like theirs. After the fire. 53 days after the convoy fell, the rains came. Not the acid storms that Novia was known for. Those came with sirens and burn suits. No, this was different. Real rain, heavy, cold, cleansing. Jarek stood beneath the half-sheltered overhang of their new outpost, a mug of bitter synth coffee in his hands, watching it fall over the rebuilt perimeter. The dirt turned dark, alive again under the weight of something natural. For the first time in years, it didn't feel like the planet was trying to kill him. Behind him, voices echoed inside the structure, laughter, low arguments, metal tools clinking over schematics. The place wasn't just an outpost anymore. It had become something else, a beginning. He heard boots behind him. He didn't turn. "I didn't think I'd ever hear that sound again," Saren said. "The rain?" "The sound of people laughing." She stepped up beside him, her coat unzipped, hands buried in her pockets, face tilted slightly toward the sky. The scar at her temple had faded, but not vanished. Like everything else about her, it remained, not as a wound, but as truth. Jarek offered the mug. She took it without a word. They stood like that for a while. No war, no orders, just breathing. "I had a dream last night," she said. He looked over. "You sleep now?" "Sometimes." He waited. She didn't smile, but her voice softened. "I dreamed I was standing in the Capitol, syndicate banners torn down, cables hanging from the towers like vines, people out in the streets, not running, not hiding, just living." He studied her face. "Sounds like a good dream." She nodded, almost didn't recognize the silence. It wasn't full of fear anymore. He didn't speak. He let her have the quiet. Inside, someone shouted for parts. Cora's voice snapped back something about rewiring, not meaning start over. Ryan barked a laugh. In one of the makeshift dorms, a child, one of the miners' daughters they'd rescued from a failed raid, was singing to a Kulan lullaby someone had taught her. Life. Real, messy, complicated life. "Did you ever think we'd make it this far?" Saren asked. Jarek took a long breath. "Honestly, but we did." "Yeah, we did." She sipped from the mug, then passed it back. "What now?" "We keep building, slowly, smart. Let the next fight come to us. And when it does, we make sure we're strong enough to hold the line." "Still thinking like a mechanic. Always." She turned to him. "I think that's why we survived. You didn't want to burn everything down. You wanted to fix it." He looked down at her hand, bruised from training, calloused from war, steady as ever. He reached out, fingers brushing hers. She didn't pull away. "Does it scare you?" she asked. "What?" "This? Peace. After everything." He thought about it, then said, "Yeah, a little. Me too." A pause. The rain fell heavier now, pooling around their boots, running off the edges of the roof. But I'd rather be scared of peace, she continued, than numb from war. He nodded. From the corner of the outpost, the comms panel pinged softly, an encrypted signal blinking once, twice, then holding. Seren didn't flinch. You want me to get that? He asked. No, she said, voice steady. Let them wait. Jarek raised an eyebrow. That's very uncommander of you. I'm not a commander, she replied. Not anymore. What are you then? She turned to him, and this time she did smile. Free. Jarek smiled back. And for the first time in their lives, the word didn't feel fragile. It felt earned. As the rain continued to fall, they stood side by side in the doorway of what used to be a hideout, and was now, finally, a home. The war had left scars. But here, in the quiet between storms, something else was growing. Not resistance, not rebellion, but something stronger, a future. And this time, it would belong to them.